Thank you very much for being here. So, Sadi Prabhu, go ahead.
All right. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Gurudev, all glories to some of the Vaishnavi devotees, and all glories to Her Grace Malati Devi. Today we have Her Grace Mother Malati, who is going to be speaking to us from the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM. Of course, Mother Malati is our big auntie, and she's been so kind and so generous with us. Sometimes she even pulls over on the highway just to speak to us, which is very, very rare to find. You know. So, Mother, we are very, very grateful for your love for us and being with us, sharing your love with us. And if you're ready, we'll put the verse on the screen and you may start speaking.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mother. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Should I start?
Yes, Mother, please.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the SRIMAD Bhagavatam, second canto, 6:6. Bahavo lokapalanam prayasya shema karmanam. So the synonyms: Bhava, arms; Lokapalanam, of the governing deities of the planets, the demigods; Prayasha, almost always; Shema Karmanam, of those who are leaders and protectors of the general mass. Translation by His Divine Grace. The Lord's arms are the productive field for the great demigods and other leaders of the living entities who protect the general mass. Srila Prabhupada's purport. I'm going to pull it up to the top. This important verse of Srimad Bhagavatam is corroborated and nicely explained in the Bhagavad Gita as follows. Can you put it up just a little bit more higher so I see? Yeah, thanks. So Bhagavad Gita 10:41-42 as follows. Yadyat virutimat fatvam srimadurjitameva va tata devavacha tvam mamatejam yashab sambhavan hatava bahunetana kim natena tavarjana istabhyaham idam kristam ekam senastito jagat. There are many powerful kings, leaders, learned scholars and scientists, artists, engineers, inventors, excavators, archaeologists, industrialists, politicians, economists, business magnates, and many more powerful deities or demigods like Brahma, Shiva, Indra, Chandra, Surya, Varuna, and Marut, who are all protecting the interest of the universal affairs of maintenance in different positions. And all of them are powerful, different powerful parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, is the father of all living entities who are placed in different high and low positions according to their desires or aspirations. Some of them, as particularly mentioned above, are specifically endowed with powers by the will of the Lord. A sane person must know for certain that a living being, however powerful he may be, is neither absolute nor independent. All living beings must accept the origin of their specific power as mentioned in this verse. And if they act accordingly, then simply by discharging their respective occupational duties, they can achieve the highest perfection of life, namely eternal life, complete knowledge, and inexhaustible blessings. As long as the powerful men of the world do not accept the origin of their respective powers, namely the personality of Godhead, the actions of Maya, illusion, will continue to act. The actions of Maya are such that a powerful person, misled by the illusory material energy, wrongly accepts himself as all in all and does not develop God consciousness. As such, the false sense of egoism, namely myself and mine, have become overly prominent in the world, and there is a hard struggle for existence in human society. The intelligent class of men, therefore, must admit the Lord as the ultimate source of all energies, and thus pay tribute to the Lord for his good blessings. Simply by accepting the Lord as the supreme proprietor of everything, since he is actually so, one can achieve the highest perfection of life. Whatever a person may be in the estimation of the social order of things, if a person tries to reciprocate a feeling of love toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is satisfied with the blessings of the Lord, he will at once feel the highest peace of mind for which he is hankering life after life. Peace of mind, or in other words, the healthy state of mind, can be achieved only when the mind is situated in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The parts and parcels of the Lord are endowed with specific powers for rendering service unto the Lord, just as a big business magnate's son are empowered with specific powers of administration. The obedient son of the Father never goes against the will of the Father, and therefore passes life very peacefully in concurrence with the head of the family, the Father. Similarly, the Lord, being the Father, all living beings should fully and satisfactorily discharge the duty and will of the Father as faithful sons. This very mentality will at once bring peace and prosperity to human society. Can we go back to the translation, please? Whoops. Yeah. Wait a second. I just lost my screen. Hare Krishna. Zoom. Okay, found it. So the translation again. The Lord's arms are the productive field for the great demigods and other leaders of the living entities who protect the general mass. Om Agyan Timirandasya Janana Sakalaya Chakchum Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Namam Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskacha Desatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare everybody, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Just a second, I forgot to bring my glass of water, and I'm just gonna need it. Yeah. Okay. Before I start, I just want to say I got this new smaller book about Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj in West Africa. I got it, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago at some event somewhere, and it's just wonderful. When I start to read, I feel like, oh, Maharaj is sitting right there. It's wonderful. So maybe some of you have participated in it, in this book, and I definitely recognize some of the names, and it just brings me closer to all of you and to Maharaj. So that was one thing. And then I'm going to ask a request from everybody. I'm doing it now because I may forget at the end. Some of you may know Kamagiri Devi Gadasi, living in Columbus. And she has wonderful children. And one of those children, initiated by Radhanath Swami, Krishangi, she has been put into hospice due to an extremely aggressive and incurable cancer. Her consciousness is wonderful. Right from the get-go, she was just accepting this situation in such a high level. It was amazing. And she's a mother. She's got even grandchildren. She's only 42. And she's completely, with grace, following the instructions of her spiritual master, Radhanath Swami, who she asked for advice at this time. But at the same time, we're feeling very sad to know she will be leaving. And I just want to ask all of your prayers. We're not like, oh, Krishna cure her, that's not it. But please help her to continue remembering you as she has been doing. And when it's time to finally get out of this diseased body, may it be swift. So thank you very much. So 266. Whoops, what is that there for? So in the Katha Upanishad, it says that beyond the Brahma Jyoti, the Nirguna, or the formless Brahman of the monist, there is the great Purusha, Purushottam, who's all pervading as the Brahma Jyoti. And without any empirical attributes, having the Sat-Chit Ananda, this transcendental embodiment, one who realizes this Purushottam tattva is finally liberated. So attaining a spiritual body, one enters into the eternal service to the Purushottam, or the Supreme Being, Lord Krishna. And the transcendental personality of Godhead is beyond the purview of occult vision, because he can be apprehended through, or he can be, by apprehended means he can be captured, you can be aware of him through a pure, transparent mind imbibed with intuitive wisdom. So this intuitive wisdom is it's a very, like a profound state of awareness, a feeling and a sense of knowing that penetrates the core of one's being. And it's not something that practice and information can lead to. It can't be taught, but it is experienced when an individual is open and without resistance to receiving it. And of course, referring back to His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he definitely embodied this intuitive wisdom and was constantly trying to open the hearts and minds of his students, his disciples and followers. And so the Lord can be apprehended through pure, transparent mind, imbibed with intuitive wisdom. And that is coming out of unalloyed devotional practices, that the very core of one's own unstinted heart. It means there's nothing blocking in the heart. Those who have really got such a vision have gained final beatitude. And this word was used, I was like, well, it's usually associated with Christianity, but how it's being used here, one who gets onto this high level, they have the vision, they've gained final beatitude. It means blessedness, unlimited blessings. So when Uddhava visited Vrindavan, he talked with Nanda Maharaj and he was explaining, nothing can exist independent of the Lord Achyuta, nothing heard or seen, nothing in the past, present, or future, nothing moving or unmoving, great or small. He indeed is everything, for he is the Supreme Soul. So this is coming from the 10th canto, later on, like 10:46, 43, but establishing the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Back in the purport, there was a sentence, whatever a person may be in the estimation of the social order of things, if a person tries to reciprocate a feeling of love towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is satisfied with the blessings of the Lord, he will at once feel the highest peace of mind for which he's hankering in his life. So I felt really drawn to that particular, the whole purport is one gem after the other, but I felt drawn to this point here. When a person tries to reciprocate feeling of love towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is reciprocated by the blessings of the Lord, at once feel highest peace of mind. So I was thinking in that regards of Krishna's friend, Sudama. So Sudama and Krishna went to school, Sandipani Muni's ashram, and it seems apparent, therefore, they must have been somewhat equals at that time. And the power, the opulence of Sudama was his total loving devotion to Krishna. When Krishna descends from his eternal abode in the spiritual world, and he appears in the mundane world, as he did over 5,000 years ago, he engages with others just like he was an ordinary human being. Although he is Aja, unborn, he appears to have a mother and father. There's one place Prabhupada said, if you're appearing in the material world, that means there must be a mother and father, So Krishna followed the prescription. So in the village of Vrindavan, Krishna plays as a cowherd boy. And he enacts these pastimes for his own transcendental pleasure and to attract all the suffering living entities back home, back to Godhead. And among these devotees, Sudama was one of those devotees who was with Krishna since childhood, and they went to school together. So at that time, there was some equality. Then Krishna, at the age of 16, left Vrindavan. Many devotees, they left their homes at that young, tender age of 16 to join the Hare Krishna movement or just join the hippie movement or do something else. But Krishna left Vrindavan at 16. And later, he married and lived as the king of Dwarka with 16,108 wives. So they're out of all of these, of course, you all know that story. We don't have so much time to get in the backstory, but the 16,000 of these queens, they had been kidnapped. I forget the fellow's name, sorry, but they were held hostage and he liberated them. And because of that, they said, now we can't go back to, we've been away from our homes. That was the custom then. If you spent the night in the home of somebody else, like another male, you were finished. Your life at home was finished. So they said, we can't go back. We have no place to go. And therefore, Krishna married them. And of course, he had the 108 gopis, and out of those gopis, or out of these, he had the 108 wives. There were 8, what they might say, 8 principal queens. They were known as Ashta, that's 8, Ashtabarya. And those were Satyabhama, Jambavati, Kalindi, Mitravinda, Nagnijati, Bhadra, Lakshmana. So these were the 8 principal queens. Anyway, in the meantime, Sudama was living as a Brahmana, which means that one who knows what the real self is in spirit, one who dedicates his life to being a spiritual guide for the whole society, that is the life of a Brahmana. And he was living like that. Brahmanas do not do things for pounds, pillings, cents, or dollars, whatever. They depend on the society, who are the members of society who take their services. It's also their duty to reciprocate, to care for the Brahmins. But the Brahmin is not going to sit there with a cash register and say, okay, I did this yagya, I did that puja, I chanted this mantra, okay, that will be ching, 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 now you owe me. Not like that. So one can't even be called a Brahmana simply because he's born as the son of Brahmana. Rather, there's qualities that one has to show before he can actually be rightly considered a Brahmana. And Prabhupada lists those qualities as peacefulness, austerity, piety, knowledge, and wisdom. So now their paths have diverged. Krishna is in Dwarka in unimaginable wealth and opulence. Sudama is remaining a humble Brahmin. Krishna's role is more on the Kshatriya side. Where they had similarity was both were householders. But Sudama had one wife, and of course, as mentioned, Krishna had 16,108 wives. So as a householder, Sudama was not busy in accumulating wealth for very comfortable living. Whatever came to him without difficulty, he took it. He engaged his time in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he showed himself to be perfect in knowledge. So externally, Sudama appeared very poor. He had no wealthy attire. He didn't even have proper clothing for his wife. In fact, they weren't even actually eating sufficiently, and as a result, they were both very thin. So as a result, Sudama's wife used to say to her husband, "My dear Prabhu, I know that Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead of all the universes, is your personal friend. After all, you went to school together. You are also a devotee of the Lord, and he is always ready to help his devotee. And moreover, Lord Krishna is always favorable to the Brahmanas. Persons like you have no other shelter but Krishna. You are saintly, you are learned and in control of your senses. Please go see him in Dwarka. I'm sure he will understand your impoverished condition." So Sudama was not prompting this. This is coming from the wife, and she continues, "You're a married man. For you to be without money means to be in a distressed condition. As soon as Krishna sees your impoverished condition, surely he will give you sufficient wealth. Krishna is known to give his own self to one who is his pure devotee. So there wouldn't be anything wonderful in him giving you some material benefits for the bare necessities of life." So in this way, she was, imploring him. And although she was not speaking out of anxiety for her own personal condition, she was fully dedicated to her son and her husband, and she treasured his saintly qualities far above material riches. So she's making this plea. I think somebody has their mic on, because I'm hearing some sounds. So she was feeling concerned for her husband, who was so pious, but was living below the minimum standards for proper physical maintenance. We'd say nowadays he didn't even get a living wage. So as a good wife, she really didn't like to dictate to her husband or say, you do this or that. But still, on repeated occasions, she would suggest that Sudama go to Dwarka to see the Supreme Lord there. On the other hand, Sudama thought there's no need to ask for any material benefit from Lord Krishna. But one time, when she made this request, Sudama got it into his mind. If I do go there, I shall be able to see the Lord personally. That will be a great opportunity, even if I don't ask any material and benefit from him. So he told his wife on that occasion that he would go. And he said, she should prepare some foodstuffs that he could present as an offering to his friend. So due to their rather impoverished situation, there wasn't anything in the house. So she went out, she was collecting some chipped rice, which is basically the lowest grade of rice. But she was going to the neighbors and she tied it up in a little handkerchief, piece of cloth. And Sudama took that presentation and he started at once towards Dwarka. Being a devotee, he was always thinking of Krishna. And now he became absorbed in the thought, soon I will be able to see my Lord. Now the Dwarka palace where Krishna lived was not accessible to anyone and everyone, because it was the king's residence after all. So it was guarded all around. But there was one exception, and that was saintly persons, sadhus. Saintly persons were allowed to enter without prior inspection, without a particular appointment. And Sudama passed through 3 military camps and many gates until he finally entered the residential quarters of Krishna. At that time, Lord Krishna was sitting with Queen Rukmini. And when he saw his friend Sudama coming, the Lord got up and he went forward to receive him and he embraced him with feeling. And this behavior of Krishna towards his friend shocked the women attendants in the palace. They were saying, but we thought Lord Krishna only embraced his queen Rukmini and his brother Balaram. So who is this poor Brahmin? He's not even clean, he's so skinny. Yet Lord Krishna has embraced him with his 2 creeper-like arms. And now he's washing the Brahmana's feet. So they were astounded. Krishna, the source of all life, comes to the mortal world to enact his pastimes as a human-like, this Nara, human-like, is actually the supreme pure. Yet he sprinkled the water used to wash the Brahmana's feet, Sudama's feet, on his own head, as if it were for purification. And he welcomed the Brahmana in so many ways, giving him food and drink, saying, my dear friend, it's a great fortune that you have come here and that we are meeting again after so long. And he sat Sudama on his own cushioned bed. He said, my dear friend, you are most intelligent and you know very well the principles of religious life. I know that after you finished your education at the house of our spiritual master, you went back to your home and accepted a suitable wife. I know from the very beginning, you were never attached to a materialistic way of life, and nor did you even desire material opulence. And then Krishna began to reminisce about their days together when they were both entrusted to the guidance of Sandipani Muni, their mutual spiritual master. So they were They were school friends. They were living in the same house as Guru. And Krishna was highly praising those days. He was saying, whatever knowledge we have received in our lives was accumulated during those days. So important is the instruction received from a bona fide spiritual master that Krishna, the Lord himself, thus everyone's spiritual master, expressed great debt. He expressed gratitude for what he had learned in his youth at the house of the Guru. And I was thinking about this point too, how if we look back in our devotional lives, for those of us who've been around for a while, it's those early days when things were injected into our heart. This knowledge of Krishna consciousness was injected into our hearts and became an integral, foundational part of our lives that you could never forget, even if you tried. So it's saying Krishna is having that same occasion to remember these teachings and acknowledging that these teachings have guided them throughout their life. So Sudama was sitting face to face with the Supreme Lord, the self-same Lord who is present in everyone's heart. And he was just thrilled to hear Krishna describe a particular adventure which they shared when they were students. So he was reminiscing, my dear friend, you may remember our activities during the days when we were living as students. You may remember that once we went out to collect fuel from the forest on the behalf of our Guru's wife. They didn't say her name out of respect, but the wife of Sandipani Muni is Sumukhi. So while we were collecting dried wood, we entered into the dense forest and we became lost. And then there was an unexpected dust storm and clouds and lightning in the sky and the explosive sounds of thunder. And then sunset came and we were completely lost in the dark jungle. And after this, there was severe rainfall. The entire area was overflooded with water and we could not trace out how to return to our Guru's house. You may remember that heavy rainfall. He's speaking to Sudama. It wasn't actually rainfall, it was like a devastation. And on account of the dust storm and the heavy rain, we began to feel greatly pained. And in whatever direction we turned, we were simply bewildered. And in that distressed condition, we took each other's hand and we tried to find our way out. And I was thinking when Krishna was saying like that, he probably, because he's sitting there with Sudama's on the bed, and he probably took Sudama's hand because we were bewildered. And in that distressed condition, we took each other's hand. So I could just see he would probably have reached out and clasped Sudama's hand. And we tried to find our way out. One time I was in Braj and it was one of Radhanath Swami's yatras. And we had like an immense number of buses. It was kind of crazy, actually, those great big huge buses, and we're going out into farmlands and crunching along in Braj deep. We're not talking about Vrindavan, outside into the into Braj. And we went to the place of Brahma Vimohan, the place where Brahma became bewildered. And we all gathered there. There was hundreds of us. And it was already a little late in the day. It was getting later and later. And to get to that place, we were walking through really tall types of, you can't even call it grass, but it probably was some kind of grass. But we're talking like 6 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet tall. I mean, it was big grasses. And we're just kind of walking along there. Then we came to this little opening, and that was the place where Lord Brahma had become bewildered. And then Radhanath Swami starts to speak on that pastime. And as he's speaking with great detail, it's becoming darker because it had been already kind of toward the end of the day. So it's getting darker and darker. And it actually became really dark. So those of us who had cell phones, we took out our phones, and those who had flashlights took out their flashlights, and we're shining the flashlights so that we could see Maharaj. And then after some time, which was quite a long time actually, Maharaj realized it's dark. Oh, we should go. So just like when Krishna and Sudama were in the woods and it became dark, they didn't know which way to, whatever they turned, they were bewildered. So it was kind of the same thing because it was now dark. We could not even figure out what direction it was we entered this little, it was like just this little break in all the tall, huge grasses, and which way did we come from? So a search party went out and found the path, at least the direction, and people started going. But then the flashlight batteries and the cell phones, everything was like losing their battery. So suddenly quite a number of us were there, not knowing, you couldn't tell up from down, right to left. And I remember this story here at that time, how they were so bewildered because we were now also, they couldn't figure out which way to go, and we were in the same condition. So then Radhanath Swami had come out first. Somehow they had brought him out, but when he saw the others hadn't come out, he refused to leave. And they, I guess, had some more little flashlights, whatever they had left. He sent them back to find the rest of us. And he just sat there the whole time. He wouldn't even take a seat in his car, in his bus. He was so worried for the devotees. And then one time with Srila Prabhupada, also in Vrindavan, there was some bus, not so many bus loads, but there was some ladies' bus and a men's bus. So there were two buses, basically. Maybe there was two for the men. But it started getting dark. So the men got back on their buses and took off. And it took a little longer for the ladies to get to our bus. And then our bus driver, because he had come following the other buses, and when we arrived, the other buses were gone, and he didn't know the way back. So we're kind of stuck on the the one bus with the ladies, not knowing where to go, and neither did the bus driver go. And meanwhile, the boys got back to the temple, and Prabhupada said, where there was one more bus. Where are the ladies? And immediately, I hope some of the men were feeling a little sheepish, like heads down, mouth closed, because they had no idea. And Prabhupada was really upset. And he forced them to go back, not both buses, but, to go back and find the ladies and bring us safely back to the Krishna Balaram temple. So anyways, just like a great person is not just concerned about themselves. In fact, they're least concerned about themselves than they are for the welfare of others. So in this case, anyway, there they are. They're in that situation. And finally, the Guru realized that in the next morning, it was in the morning, they found the Guru realized, oh, they're not back. So he sent other disciples to search for them. And he also came with the disciples. And when they reached in the jungle, they found the two boys. And with great compassion, our Guru said, my dear boys, it's very wonderful that you have suffered so much trouble for me. Everyone likes to take care of his body as a first condition, but you're so good. And I'm glad to see that bona fide students like you will undergo any type of trouble for the spiritual master. It is the duty of the disciple to dedicate his life to the service of the spiritual master. And then he was continue, my dear blessed ones, I'm greatly pleased by your action, and I bless you. May all your desires and ambitions be fulfilled. So that was nice, but the next part of the blessing was beautiful. He said, may the understanding of the scriptures, which you have learned from me, always continue to remain within your memory, so that at every moment you can remember the teachings and quote their instructions without difficulty. And thus you will never be disappointed in this life or the next. So that's a very beautiful blessing. Definitely not of a mundane caliber. So then Krishna continued speaking to his dear friend. My dear friend, you may remember that many such incidences occurred while we were in the ashram of our spiritual master. And both of us can realize that without the blessings of the spiritual master, one cannot be happy. By the mercy of the spiritual master, Yasya Prasada, and by his blessings, one can achieve peace and prosperity and be able to fulfill the mission of the human life. So Sudama, he completely understood that Krishna was the supreme controller of both the material and the spiritual worlds. And therefore he appreciated that Krishna had played the role of a student and was now acting as the queen of Dwarka, simply as part of his pastimes for his transcendental pleasure. And even the pure devotee does not know everything about the Supreme Lord. He definitely relishes hearing about his transcendental pastimes, how he creates, how he destroys, how he maintains the his form, his incarnations, how he personally descends into the material world and enacts pastimes, and how he internally engages in blissful affairs with his devotees in the spiritual planets far beyond this material universe, which is like material universe. If we get our little math calculations, it's only 1/4 of the total aggregate sum of universes, and the universes are unlimited. So the scientists, they don't have any information of the spiritual sky beyond this material universe, but the devotee, by performing devotional service, hearing from the bona fide authority, very soon has knowledge of Krishna, and the result is the spiritual kingdom is revealed from within his heart. So Krishna talked a long time with Sudama, and they were, mutually enjoying each other's company. And then Krishna began to smile, and he said, my dear friend, what have you brought for me? Has your wife given you some nice edibles? And Sudama, there he is in this royal palace, this incredible opulence, is feeling great shyness, and he hesitated to hand over that chipped rice. And the Lord assured him, Krishna assured him, he was not in need of anything, but he would gladly accept any offerings given with love. And Sudama was thinking, how can I offer such an insignificant thing? But the Lord knew his heart, and he knew very well, since he's situated in everyone's heart, that the Brahmana had come to see him on the instigation of his wife to get material opulence. So he understood that. And moreover, he knew fully well that Sudama's love for him was not tainted by any desire for material benefit. So then Krishna decided he would lavishly award Sudama. So he goes, what's this? And Krishna snatched that little bundle of chipped rice, which was tucked in the corner of Sudama's shoulder pack. Oh, my dear friend, Krishna went on, very enthusiastic. My dear friend, you brought me such nice, palatable chipped rice. It will please not only me, but the whole creation. He was speaking very magnanimously. So it was understood from this statement Krishna being the original source of everything, Govindamadi Purusam, is the root of the entire creation. And as watering the root of a tree immediately distributes water to every other part of the tree, so an offering made to Krishna or any action done for Krishna is considered to be the highest welfare work for everyone. And the benefit of such an offering is distributed throughout the creation. So while Krishna was praising this humble offering, and he ate a morsel, a little piece of the rice, but when he took his hand and started to take another piece, a second piece, Rukmini, the goddess of fortune, stopped the Lord. She took a hold of his hand. My dear Lord, by your taking one piece of rice, Sudama will become wealthy, not only in this life, but in the next. Because she didn't want to see her husband munching on this inferior offering. You're so kind that this one morsel of rice is enough to cause him who offered it to become very opulent in this life and continue as such in the next. So Rukmini, the goddess of fortune, she was already personally obliged to stay as a guest in the Brahmana's house in order to benedict him with great fortune. So Sudama didn't appear to have received anything from Krishna, and neither did he ask for anything. The whole time he was just merged in an ocean of transcendental bliss. And after taking rest that night in the palace, the next morning he started to leave for his home. And he was just completely absorbed in remembering the dealings with the Lord. He was feeling happy just for having seen him. On the way home, he was just filled with these ecstatic reminiscences. Oh, Krishna so respects the Brahmanas that he embraced me to his chest, a poor Brahmana like me. How can there be any comparison between me and the Supreme Lord Krishna, who's the only shelter of the goddess of fortune? He allowed me to sit on his bedstead when I was tired, and Rukmini began to fan me. She never considered her own exalted position. I was rendered service by the Supreme Personality of Godhead because of his high regard to the Brahmanas, and by massaging my legs and feeding me with his own hand, he practically worshipped me. And yet the Lord, who was so kind for me, did not even give me a penny, knowing very well I'm poverty-stricken. If I got some money, I might become puffed up and mad after material opulences and then forget him. So he was praising Krishna because it seemed like he didn't get anything. But he was feeling completely satisfied just for having had this beautiful, intimate exchanges with the Supreme Lord. So thinking like this, when he got home, he started to look for his cottage, and he saw instead of his cottage this huge, gorgeous palace. Instead of like the little hut with like broken roof and leaves and bamboos, this gorgeous palace made of valuable stones and jewels, and it was glittering like the sun. What is this? What is this, he thought. How am I seeing these changes? Does this place belong to me or someone else? Surely this is where I used to live. It's the same spot, same place, but how wonderfully it has changed. And then one dazzling opulence and beauty after the other was revealed to Sudama Brahman. His old neighborhood, his entire neighborhood had become transformed into an area of parks with nice lakes full of lotus flowers and lilies and flocks of multicolored birds. Not only that, beautiful men and women were strolling in the park, and musical chanters who looked like demigods, came forward to greet him. On hearing about her husband's arrival, the wife of the Brahmana ran out of the palace to greet him. And she also was so appearing beautiful. It seemed as if she was the goddess of fortune herself who had come to meet him. Sudama was surprised to see his wife's transformation, appearing so beautiful and greatly affectionate. Without saying a word, he just entered the palace along with her, and he saw his inner chambers were like the residence of the King of Heaven. The palace was surrounded by many columns of jewels and rich canopies of velvet and silk hung in various places. Everything was absolutely opulent. Could not determine what had caused the change, but then he began to consider, I have always been poor. What could be the cause of this? It could only have come from the all-merciful glance of my friend Lord Krishna. Surely these things are the causeless mercy of my friend Krishna. Sudama could understand that the Lord considered such an insignificant offering as a handful of chipped rice offered with affection by his devotee a great thing, and that he had given him riches more wonderful than any seen on earth or even possessed by the demigods in the heavenly planets. Sudama then offered prayers to Krishna. He prayed, I don't want any opulence. And he prayed that all I want is that I might not forget to offer eternal service to Krishna. I don't want to forget you, Krishna. Whatever opulence he received from the Lord, he did not want to mistakenly use it for his own extravagance. He only wanted to use it for the service of the Lord, and he was praying that that might be so. And in this way, he accepted everything that happened as prasadam, the Lord's mercy. Because actually, anything we receive from the Lord, any facility, any wealth, fame, power, education, it should be used for Krishna's service, not for our sense enjoyment. Actually, this is true empowerment. And Sudama remained in these opulent surroundings without any detriment to his spiritual life. And his affection for Krishna was increasing day after day. He was made more aware of his friend at every moment and of the Lord's mercy. So then one can ask, how did the Brahmana's wealthy surroundings make him more conscious of Krishna? In fact, why did Krishna award him with material things? So the answer we can find in the Krishna book narrative. The Brahman accepted his newly acquired opulence, but he did so in the spirit of renunciation, unattached to sense gratification. And thus he lived very peacefully with his wife, enjoying all the facilities of opulence as prasadam, Krishna's mercy. In other words, he took nothing for himself, but only for Krishna, for Krishna's pleasure. And he enjoyed varieties of foodstuff by offering it to the Lord and then taking it as prasadam. So similarly, if by the grace of Krishna we get such opulences like some material wealth or some fame or power, education, beauty, whatever, it's our duty to consider they are all gifts of the Lord, for the Lord, and they must be used for his service, not for our sense enjoyment. The learned Brahmana remained in that position, and instead of deteriorating due to great opulence, his love and affection for Lord Krishna increased daily. So this is the point. Material opulence can be the cause of degradation as well as the cause of elevation, according to the purpose and intention it's used. So this opulence for if it's used for sense gratification, it becomes the cause of degradation. Because why? Forgetting Krishna. But when used for the service of the Lord, then it's a cause for elevation. So if money or wealth can be used in Krishna's service. It can be used if it's used to increase the remembrance and revive love of God, love of Krishna, then it must be used. We can't mistake Sudama's motive. Even when receiving the riches, he thought, I don't want any opulence. I only desire not to forget his service. I simply wish to associate with his pure devotees. Sudama was just as happy as when he was poor, because he always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. And in this modern age, of course, that was a few hundred years ago, but the Goswamis, followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Rupa and Sanatan, were highly placed, wealthy government officials, and they gave up everything to follow Lord Chaitanya's Hare Krishna movement. And they lived as mendicants without even a permanent residence, that they became richer and richer, remembering Radha and Krishna's pure devotees. And they never lamented having given up their mundane wealth. Many times when devotees join the Hare Krishna movement, they will impetuously give everything away. And then later, I've personally observed this and heard that they will lament, oh, I could have, had I kept. But from the pure devotee who actually gives everything in renunciation to the Lord's pleasure, there's never any lamentation. Rich or poor, the criterion for eternal happiness is to remember Krishna in any condition. And the point is made, however, if one does give something to Krishna, no matter how little it is, one will not be the loser. What the devotee offers to Krishna is not needed by Krishna because he's self-sufficient. He's already the owner of everything. Whatever a devotee offers to the Lord comes back in quantity 1,000,000 times greater than what was offered. So Krishna gave Sudama gave a few grains of chipped rice, and in return, he received heavenly opulence. And as a pure devotee, Sudama was expert in accepting the wealth and using it as more facility for serving Krishna. It's related to by his constant association with the Lord. Sudama had removed whatever contamination that might have remained in his heart. It was removed shortly, and he was transferred to the eternal spiritual kingdom, the goal of all saintly persons in the perfectional state of life. It's stated in the Krishna book that whoever hears this story, actually the history, whoever hears this history will become qualified like Sudama and will be transferred to the spiritual kingdom of Lord Krishna. So now it's 2 minutes past time, but yeah, Krishna is always there in every respect for each and every human being, no matter their position in society. And that position is enhanced only by remembering Krishna. They gave us the verses from the Gita, that yatyad vivumatit sattvam. So that from 1041, know that all beautiful, glorious, and mighty creations spring from a spark of my splendor. And Prabhupada commented that any glorious or spiritual existence must be understood to be but a fragmental manifestation of Krishna's opulence, whether it be in the material or spiritual world. But anything extraordinary, opulent, should be considered to represent Krishna's opulence. And then the next verse, Tava bahunantena. But what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. So, yeah. SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM ki jai, is Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, all of you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mother, for such wonderful delivery of Krishna Katha. I was actually going to beseech of you to offer your humble prayers to Krishnangi, and you announced it.
I went to see her it was on Monday.
Yeah.
Last Monday, a week ago today, that she got released from the hospital, and they realized up until that point they were considering maybe a surgery or not for the tumor brains, but upon investigation, it wasn't possible to go further, so she was released to her home, and then they decided, there's really nothing. Of course, for us, there's always something. The prayers and mercy of the Lord, prayers of the devotee, mercy of the Lord. But they put her into hospice, and I found that out on Tuesday. And I happened to have been in Ohio. I was at a program in Athens. It's just an hour and a half away. So I immediately after I went up there and I spent time with her on Wednesday. And I was honestly telling you, I was going for her association because I already knew her consciousness said throughout this whole episode was transforming so nicely.
Some of us are planning to visit her this weekend. We hope by Guru Krishna's grace, she will still be here. We will also be here. I read some time ago, I don't think it was written, whether I read or heard from some of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, when Srila Prabhupada was not feeling well during his last chapters on this planet. Devotees had asked him to pray to Sri Krishna for a little more time. And Srila Prabhupada also asked the disciples to pray to Krishna. And the disciples said, Srila Prabhupada, you are pure devotee, you speak to Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada said, you are all devotees. So on that premise, I'm humbly requesting all the devotees assembled here to also pray for this beautiful lady. She used to be on our Sangha from time to time, participating Bhagavatam Katha with us. And it's a very tough situation, but all we can do is to pray. And thank you, Mother, for being with us and also sharing your love with us.
Thank you so much for admitting me to your Sangha.
Yeah, devotees, if anyone may have a question or comment, please, you may indicate by using the hand emoji or your physical hand, and you'll be asked to unmute to speak. And if it's possible, you turn on your cameras so Mother may see you. Hare Krishna.
Or Premananda Haribol. Otherwise, if permitted, I can take your leave.
Okay. Well, Mother, before you leave, I had two questions, but I will make it to just one.
Okay.
Yeah, because you have to leave. Being one of the early disciples of Srila Prabhupada, we hear from some devotees that initially the devotees were addressing Srila Prabhupada as Swamiji.
Correct.
And Srila Prabhupada was not very happy with that. And
no, that's not the way it was at all. Okay. He didn't say anything.
Okay.
Her Grace Govinda Dasi.
Yes.
Came to find out that actually Swamiji was not such, it was kind of like third class type of address. It wasn't all that respectful, you know. And so then she asked, well, what could we call you that would be more respectful? So some different things are mentioned, but the name Prabhupada, meaning he whose at feet all fall, because he had taught us to call each other Prabhu by this point. And we called each other Prabhu, meaning you are my master, men and women. There was no distinction. Prabhupada was so visionary. So now these so-called enlightened younger devotees, oh, that's a masculine word. But Prabhupada was beyond this type of bodily designation, and he taught us all to address each other as Prabhu, which put a nice mood in the way we would interact. So then that idea of Prabhupada, so the master, the one at whose feet all other Prabhus put their head. And Govinda Dasi really liked that. Can we call you Prabhupada? And he agreed.
Thank you so much, because that is exactly what some of us read, because a wonderful soul had shared the same story just like you narrated. So thank you for sharing that. And at this point, we're going to humbly request all the devotees to kindly unmute, and we all chant the loudest Hare Krishna mantra to express our appreciation for Malati's presence here and her love and her devotion to Shri Krishna and speaking to all of us. Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama
Rama Hare Hare. Kapata Rudyaskya Kripa Sindhudya Sivasya Patitana Pavachni Vaishnav Vibhyo Namo Namaha Nanta Kuti Vaishnava Binda Ki Jai. Praise Malati Devi Dasi Ki Jai.
I hope to see you again soon.
Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Mother.
You're welcome.
So devotees, we thank you all for your participation, your love for Srimad Bhagavatam, and we hope to see you all again tomorrow. So I asked this question so that we can also hear from those who are like first-hand witnesses to what was shared on the Hare Krishna WhatsApp platform. So I hope we understand what it means now, that Srila Prabhupada said, from what Govinda Dasi had also discovered, Swamiji is not just anything, but it's for like third class. So we should learn. Hare Krishna. And we hope to have your association again tomorrow. And like I said, this particular lady, Krishangi, she's going through lots of challenges. It's not so easy, so pleasant leaving the body. It's very difficult. It's very painful. And we're seeking the blessings of all you devotees gathered here, and we may also pass it on to other devotees, that we all pray for her smooth passage to a better world. And actually today is Ekadashi, and it also happens to be the appearance day of Vamanadev. And we all know the story how Vamanadev sort of cheated Bali Maharaj, but in the long run, he actually benedicted him. So it may appear as if that we are losing this beautiful soul, but obviously Krishna is going to award her a finer and a better place than where she is at now. That is how Krishna works. So please humbly beseeching you all to kindly pray for this beautiful soul. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.